Project Veritas, the eternal purveyor of good takes and legitimate, truthful, fact-finding investigative journalism. Not the first time I've talked about Project Veritas in this stream. Every time they do anything, it turns out they're lying. Like, literally, you can look at the Wikipedia page for Project Veritas, and every single big expose of theirs has, like, the segment at the bottom where it was proven false. You know, every single time. But Project Veritas, they rely on you not reading. So they're not really, that doesn't hurt their core demographic. Now, I want to talk to you about the most recent Veritas scam, okay? Let's go over it. Now, some of you may remember this. This is about a week old, week and a half at this point. Project Veritas got just an exceptionally deep-voiced motherfucker in Erie to claim and sign an affidavit claiming that his supervisor had been backdating ballots that were postmarked after the election. I'll let him explain.
I don't think I wasn't supposed to hear that. I was one of the last carriers in the building. I don't even think he realized I was still there.
Real voice, by the way. That's his real voice. Postal worker whistleblower in Erie, Pennsylvania says his postmaster orders ballots to be backdated.
Tell me where you work.
I work at the post office in Erie, PA.
Tell us what happened this morning, November the 5th.
This morning I was casing my route and I saw the postmaster pull one of our
I want you guys to pay attention to this, okay?
supervisors to the side. And as he was pulling the supervisor, it was really close to where my case was, so I was able to listen in. And I heard him say to the supervisor that they messed up yesterday. I was like, oh, what did they mess up on? And he told the supervisor that they had postmarked one of the ballots for the 4th instead of the 3rd, because they were supposed to put them for the 3rd.
This is boring. Essentially, the gist of it is that he claims that he heard his supervisor attempting to make ineligible ballots eligible for the specific purpose of getting Donald Trump out, okay? Now, this is a very serious accusation if it turns out that a supervisor at the Postal Service is actually complicit in making illegal votes legal, then that would be a bad thing. Now, what we have here is called hearsay. In a legal sense, this means fucking nothing. Hearsay is essentially, I heard a thing. That's it. It's a fucking anecdote. It's useless. But the degree to which an individual is willing to commit to their claim, their, interpretation of an event, can be important. My man over here, no, hearsay isn't always useless. But often it is. Now, he signed an affidavit. Now, an affidavit is a legal statement which you certify that you believe the thing you're writing down. Now, here's the key distinction between an affidavit and saying something under oath. Okay? Are you ready for it? When you say something under oath, you will be fucking arrested if you lie. Whereas an affidavit, while it does have there are legal sometimes consequences to lying in an affidavit, they are not nearly as severe. That is to say, it is not a criminal offense. You cannot perjure yourself in an affidavit. So this is one of the reasons why I've been saying for a while, the last thing Trump supporters want is for the government to start taking seriously their claims of voter fraud. Because every single fucking time Trump administration lawyers end up getting in front of a judge, they go, oh shit, it's illegal to lie now. Fuck. Oh God. Oh shit. And then all of a sudden, all these claims get scaled back. All of these hard-hitting claims get rolled back into, well, we heard a guy say, and they all get dismissed for lack of evidence. So here's the key thing. Generally speaking, the last thing these voter fraud accusation hoax artists want is to be in front of a judge. Because if you're making statements that can get you perjured, things get a lot more serious. Now, with all that being said, I want to tell you guys a story, okay? And it is a story in which the real victim of all of the circumstances that we're seeing, the real victim in this story, is this man right here. The man whose face is currently pixelated. I believe that he is the actual victim of this series of events. And I'm going to share with you the reason why I believe that. Now, shortly after this expose, our man over here, our man on the inside, ended up having some investigators speak with him. After all, he made a claim about, voter fraud. Investigators need to investigate. And look at that! Here's a WAPO article. Postal worker, that's the guy, recanted allegations of ballot tampering, officials say. Well, look at that, people. We'll read this quickly before moving forward. A Pennsylvania postal worker whose claims have been cited by top Republicans as potential evidence of widespread voter irregularities admitted to U.S. Postal Service investigators that he fabricated the allegations, according to 3 officials briefed on the investigation and a statement from the House Congressional Committee. Pretty wacky, huh? Richard Hopkins' claim, Richard Hopkins is the whistleblower, the man on the inside, that a postmaster in Erie instructed postal workers to backdate ballots mailed after Election Day was cited by Senator Lindsey Graham in a letter to the Justice Department calling for a federal investigation. Bad move, Lindsey. Again, you do not want feds looking into any of your claims. What you want is for them to go viral on Twitter and YouTube, okay? Because there is no legal consequence to lying on Twitter and YouTube, okay? If you get feds, if you get the courts involved, suddenly there are legal consequences, okay? You want to be very careful about that. It is not illegal to lie on Twitter. I think anyone who's been to Twitter can see that pretty evidently from even a brief perusal of the type of content that makes it on there. But on Monday, Hopkins, 32, told investigators from the U.S. Postal Service's Office of Inspector General that the allegations were not true, and he signed an affidavit recanting his claims according to officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe an ongoing investigation. So he recanted. The affidavit was recanted. Look at that. Wow, it's all over. So that's it, huh? Well, here's a video that was posted yesterday.
They were grilling the hell out of me.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm kind of pissed. I feel like I just got played.
Uh-oh. Richard Hopkins was interrogated and lied to by investigators. Notice the language here, by the way. After he blew the whistle on what he believed was illegal backdating of ballots. That's an interesting change in language from all of the previous videos and material Project Veritas has put out in this story. What he believed was very, very legally specific wording there. This goddamn music.
And so let me make good on that.
Ah, yes. And over here, we have a highly edited segment from the 2-hour audio from the investigators when they briefed him. And we're going to go over that shortly. But until then, that music.
Back in Afghanistan getting shot at by Afghans. Honest to God. Then, having to be in this kind of position. I was in Afghanistan and Iraq. 2 tours while I was in the Marines.
I don't see how this is relevant.
But at the same time, it's not my name that's going to be there.
So the Marine Corps birthday.
I don't care.
To the issue of, own government. Could you just speak to these issues on Veterans Day?
Basically, I wasn't coming to work until the investigation was.
And I think.
But even after all this, Richard Hopkins stands by his original story and says he does not recant, period. And there we have it, people. There we have it. Richard Hopkins claimed that he had witnessed an attempt at voter tampering or ballot tampering. And then the feds, or the post office investigators, claimed that he recanted, but he's now recanting the recant. So what's the truth, people? What the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? What is the truth, people? I ask you. Well, as it so happens, a very scrupulous Mr. Hopkins was actually kind enough to, as I understand it, illegally record the entire interaction that he had had with the investigators when they came and spoke with him. Just 1 second. Sorry. Looks like I need to do something. What was the last thing that I said? I completely forget. So, what is the truth? Richard Hopkins is saying that he never recanted. The post office investigators are saying that he did recant. Why, the only way to know what actually happened is if somebody was insane enough to listen to the entirety of the raw audio from the USPS whistleblower interrogation done on Hopkins. Let me how about we just go to the interesting part, huh? Now, this is Charles Klein, a postal inspector. Now, I want to give you guys some information, okay? Well, actually, I want to ask you a question first. How do investigators and investigative journalists suss out what is true or what is fake? See, this is a big claim that's being made here. The idea that there was ballot tampering going on, this isn't some like errant, weird, dumb accusation of middling, relevance. This is a serious national matter. Like, there are senators talking about this. The goal of an investigator is to wear down the person they are talking to until they are in a state where they can be caught on inconsistencies or their hyperbolic claims can be scaled back to something more reasonable or expected. That is the goal of an investigator. That is the case whether the investigator works for the federal government, whether the investigator works for the Postal Service, whether the investigator works for a police department, whether the investigator is private or an accomplice to a journalist. It does not matter. That is the job of an investigator. There is nothing wrong or unethical about that process. That is how they do things. You need to be able to determine what is true and what is false. Let me give you an example. A while ago, I forget how long ago, Project Veritas attempted a scheme. You know what they were going to try to do? They were going to try to show everyone how untrustworthy liberal media is by sending a woman over to, I believe it was just the Washington Post. And they were going to have this woman claim, lie, that she had been raped by Roy Moore, who, if you remember, was the pedophilic senatorial candidate from Alabama. And they were gonna, what they wanted was for WAPO to just go like, oh yeah, dude, totally, we'll run it front page. And then they could come out with their grand deception, their tremendous deception. Haha, it was all a fake, a plant. You'll print anything, Orange Man bad, blah, blah. Anyway, WAPO investigated the claim. And they tripped the Project Veritas plant up until they determined that her claims were not credible, and then they didn't run shit. That is how investigations are done. And it is a good process, because if you don't investigate, every bullshit claim a propagandist wants to push is going to get through completely unchecked, completely unverified. It is necessary to subject claims such as this of ballot tampering to a significant degree of investigative scrutiny. And with that in mind, let's watch a couple of select minutes from this video.
The reality is, please don't let me put words in your mouth. The reality is, you heard words and you assumed what they were saying.
My mind probably added the rest.
That's Richard Hopkins saying, my mind probably added the rest.
Understand that. No, I understand how hearsay and listening.
You have to know, it seems so basic.
Hold on just one moment. Vosh, you're right that these techniques are morally neutral, but it's clear in this case the investigator was motivated to get him to recant, not investigate truth in particular. That is absolutely false. That is 100% incorrect. These investigators, all they did was try to suss out the legitimacy of these claims by making sure that what the man was saying was completely, absolutely 100%, confident. That he was saying this in absolute confidence. And he was not.
Sick, Alex, but you have to know how important it is. That's why
I was really mad when I heard that people were giving Rob death threats, because that's fucked.
He's now saying that he is sad to hear that his supervisor was receiving death threats because he is not certain to the legitimacy of his claims.
Yeah, yeah. It also doesn't paint you in a bad light. You understand that, right? What it does is it shaves this down to the narrowest of truths, which is the strongest of truths. And what I'm hearing
Oh my God.
you say, and I'm waiting for you to challenge me, okay? What I'm hearing you say is,
listen to this. Now, the investigator is going to read out what he understands is the account that this man has to provide.
you heard these words. And the words you heard was the fourth postmark. Most were the third, one was the fourth.
Yes.
Right?
Those were the specific words that I remember real well.
And then when you pieced those words together, you assumed what they were saying was the fourth, the mail on the fourth should have been postmarked for the third.
Yes.
That's what you assumed it meant.
That's what I'm figuring my mind probably gone to. Because even I've been questioning it at this point.
Listen to that. All he heard was, some are for the third, one is for the fourth, from a distance. And what he assumed that meant was that his supervisor was ordering another person to engage in ballot tampering. And even he acknowledges that he made an assumption, that he has drawn his own conclusions, and that he's doubting it even now.
Because it's been so long, and it's gotten me so freaked out.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm not trying to say that I don't want any. I don't.
You know why it's okay to be freaked out? Because this has gotten out of everybody's hands.
I understand.
It's gotten so.
And all it is hearsay, and that's the worst part.
That's from Richard Hopkins himself.
Well, it's not even hearsay is the thing. It's an assumption. And that's the important thing. And if we characterize it as, this is what I thought those words meant, then there's no way that huge stones can be lobbed at you. Because that's very different than saying, they said this.
Yes.
Right? Because we've gone from painting a probable to being 1,000% in your face accurate. Right? You see where I'm going with that?
This is one of the ways that you can suss out lies or misinformation, even in interpersonal relationships. Have you ever had somebody come at you with, like, some incredibly, like, aggressive or unlikely claim? You know what I mean? And then you talk with them a little bit, you ask them a couple of questions, and they back off a little bit, and it's more like, well, I heard X, or I heard Y, or, you know, like, if you think about it, and you push a little bit harder, and some of the threads that connect some of the ideas pull apart, and eventually all you're left with is conjecture, just weak conjecture. It's what I do to basically every single conservative argument I debunk on this channel. That's how it works. How many times have you heard me debunk, like, I don't know, the Great Replacement? The idea that, like, people are collaborating in an effort to destroy white people by immigrating black or brown people. And usually, the initial claim is this: Jews and blacks and browns and SJWs and leftists are collaborating together to destroy the white race by promoting miscegenation, interracial relationships, and immigration. And then when you pull apart the strings a little bit, it turns into, well, I don't know if any of these groups are working together, but they seem to all have the same goal. And then when you pull apart a little bit more, you go, well, I don't know about all these groups. It's just more like this is a thing that's happening, and I notice that it's being done by certain types of people. And then you pull it a little bit harder, and they go, well, actually, I get that it's mostly just major corporations that are pushing the interracial element, and that it's just like a component of IDPOL, and it's another like aspect of a society that's becoming more progressive, an inevitable component of capital markets that have nothing to do with any nefarious intent from any group of people, but it's still happening. And then you go point by point by point, and every time they back up, they back up, they back up. It's a Mott and Bailey fest all the way from the start to the finish, and it never ends. There's always some other claim to retreat to. That's what's happening right here. Look at this. This man has recanted. This is a recant right here. He signed an affidavit that he was confident, that he was certain that his supervisor had engaged in ballot tampering. And what is he saying here? I recognize that it was an assumption. I get it's hearsay. My mind put together the pieces after I heard a couple of words. This is a recanting. But we can go further.
And that's all I'm doing with that conversation, is because we know it's hard to hear there. I'm not saying you didn't. I believe you did, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I believe you can hear there because your ears acclimate, but it's a lot of dead air there,
Mm-hmm.
which means if you would have said, I heard this word for word, and you would have given me a paragraph, I would have doubted you.
Yes.
Because I don't think that's possible.
It's not feasible.
When I said something in this tone to you, you didn't hear what I said.
Yes.
Right? So, I believe we've gone from what's improbable to accuracy. And I believe the accuracy of the situation is you heard something that concerns you, and if
And added with all the stuff that was being
what
brought.
you assumed it means, it is problematic.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, added with how they were treating these ballots, I was picking up these ballots with what I had heard and the assumption based on putting two to two.
Putting two and two together.
Two and two together.
I'm gonna tell you why. One
We're
of the
almost
things
done
I'm
with
trying
this.
to protect you against.
Okay.
Okay. There is money involved in this, and you know that because of this
GoFundMe. I can't even touch it.
That's okay, but your name is associated with it.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I'm not scaring you, but I am scaring you here. Okay. If we are not 1,000% accurate with our honesty, and it can be argued that money was gained by, I'm going to say assumptions, they're going to say deceptions, that is, you could be held accountable for.
Understood.
And I am not going to allow that.
So this is very typical investigator talk. Their goal here is to seem as though they're on the side of the person that they're investigating, and that by getting him to make more accurate claims, they're trying to distance him from something that can be make him legally that could make him like legally vulnerable in the future.
Okay.
That is why we're going to the exact words and the exact accuracy, because I'm not going to let you be put in that situation. Okay? Most people, and this is, let me tell you how you're impressing me on this.
Butter him up.
Because most people would see dollar signs and be like, I'll say whatever the hell you want me to say.
Yes.
Okay? And what you just proved to me is that's not you. And I have to tell you, I respect you
Butter him up.
immensely. So thank you for being upfront with me.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I feel like the truth needed to get out. That's all. I wanted this investigation to happen. That's why I even came out the first time. I wanted to be anonymous. I didn't want to come out, but...
This part's important.
You didn't want to be the face of this.
No,
Am I correct with that? But if what you assumed was true, your pride in this country can't let you not act. Is that also fair?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What would you say? I'm making, just so you know, I'm making this up. This is not reality right now. I'm making this up. This is a hypothetical. What would you say?
Listen.
If it came out that Rob did not say that? He used those words, but he was actually saying something else.
I would feel fucking horrible.
Would you believe that? Would you believe it's possible?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
It's possible.
Okay.
And that's it right there. That's it right there. If I told you that the thing you signed an affidavit for hadn't actually happened, would you believe it? And he's like, yeah, maybe, yeah. This is a recant. This is unquestionably, undeniably, unequivocally a recant. But then, motherfucker goes right back with Project Veritas and says that he hasn't recanted. So let me try to paint you guys a narrative. And I don't know that this is 100% true, but I think that this is the most accurate explanation, the most likely explanation of what we're looking at right here. Okay? Richard Hopkins is a postal worker. He makes a postal worker's salary. He's a Trump supporter, so he's not that bright. I think that's pretty much a given. And while working during an incredibly heated election cycle with an enormous amount of propaganda being fired off by the Republican Party, he overhears something. And what he overhears sounds to him like evidence of ballot tampering. He understands that what he has is not sufficient to go to a mainstream news network, but he does know of one little right-leaning investigative journalistic organization called Project Veritas. He goes to Project Veritas and he shares anonymously these claims. And things get way bigger than he wanted them to. These claims, his claims, start getting shared as far up as the United States government, as senators. And once you reach that point, it's not really sufficient to just leave things be at anonymous YouTube video. Investigations have to be made. And this is a key point here. He made a GoFundMe at the request of Project Veritas. That's a violation of journalistic ethics right there. You know why? Because him getting money on GoFundMe is contingent on the extent to which Republicans believe his story is valid and useful to them politically. Essentially meaning there is a monetary incentive for you, Richard Hopkins, to give people the story they want to hear. He made that GoFundMe at the request of Project Veritas, and you can't have a GoFundMe for an anonymous whistleblower. His name had to be attached to it. And because his name is now out there, and this has gotten a lot more attention, my man, Richard Hopkins, attracts the attention of the United States Postal Service investigative team. And Project Veritas, their only interest is getting money and attention. That's it. They don't give a fuck about Richard Hopkins. They don't give a shit about this guy. They don't give a fuck if he gets arrested. They don't care. All they care about is the media cycle. So they give Richard Hopkins one piece of advice. Don't talk. But Richard Hopkins, confident or dim, whichever you prefer, he talks with those investigators. And in that investigative interview, he recants. They butter him up. They break him down. They get from him multiple and unequivocal pieces of of evidence indicating that they are backing off of their initial claim. But what happens exactly after Richard Hopkins gets out of there and returns to Project Veritas with his tail between his legs saying, yeah, I basically told them everything? Do you think Project Veritas is going to say, oh, okay, pack it up? Do you think Project Veritas is going to back off of this now that there's some sort of investigative evidence that he has recanted his initial statement? Nope. Project Veritas, I'm going to guess, fearmongers this motherfucker. Hey, you still want to make your GoFundMe money, don't you? Hey, you don't want to be a laughingstock in front of the country, don't you? Hey, you don't want to betray your country, don't you? You didn't recant. No, you were bullied. You were pressured by those investigators into saying things you did not actually believe. Now, this is incredibly dangerous for a number of reasons. First of all, if this guy ever says anything under oath, he's fucked. And Project Veritas knows that, which is why they're never going to get him in front of a court. Instead, the investigative team of the United States Postal Service has already gotten the information they want. As far as the government is concerned, he's recanted. They did their investigation. He recanted. He gave information which was contrary to his initial affidavit. That's done. In a federal sense, this is over. Like in a government sense, this is over. But Project Veritas doesn't actually care about the outcome of this election. They don't actually care about what happens with the story as long as it blows up. So Project Veritas, knowing that they no longer have any obligation to run their claims by the government, they can milk this shit for as long as they want. With this, honestly, I think, taken advantage of man at the center of all of it. In all likelihood, if it weren't for the investigators teasing out his recanting, this guy might have ended up perjuring himself down the line. This guy might have ended up getting himself in legal trouble. It was because of the investigators that he ended up being forced out of that avenue before it arrived at a point where he could get in trouble. And now he's just going to be a pawn for Project Veritas for as long as he can. He makes a postal worker's salary. Dude's not exactly rolling in it. I imagine, a significant increase in his standard of living rests on his ability to go along with Project Veritas's narrative. Now, Project Veritas isn't stupid. James O'Keefe isn't stupid. They know that even though this raw audio that they uploaded completely and 100% demonstrates the fact that he recanted, they know none of these motherfuckers, not one of them is going to watch it. Not one of them is going to listen to it. You know why I listened to it? Because when my stream wouldn't work yesterday because YouTube was down, I decided to play Hades, the new roguelike. Well, it's been in early access since 2018, but I played that while listening to Destiny's stream, and Destiny was listening to it. That's the reason why. So credit where credit's due. Thanks for that. Nobody's going to listen to this shit on their own. Nobody is. Because these are Republicans. They're barely literate. Okay? Look at this. Oh, there is one piece of good advice in here, by the way. Do you have legal representation? No. Good, this is going to be much easier. Don't talk to law enforcement without a lawyer. That is true. That is true. That is a good piece of advice from Raven Slaves down here in the comments of a Project Veritas video, okay? That is true, all right? That is 100% true. Anyway, they're basically just in here bitching about how mean investigators are when they're trying to find the truth. You know, they're trying to trip him up, trying to gaslight him, trying to get him on record questioning himself. Yeah, by asking him directly if he agrees with their characterization of his take, or by asking him if he is confident in his own statements and he says no. The investigators, I don't think they were sleazy at all. I think the investigators were, oh yeah, it's funny, yeah, Republicans claim to be the party of law and order, but right now they're like attacking the idea of like investigators trying to suss out the details of a crime. We know they're liars, whatever. The point that I'm getting at here is that this is an incredible example of a number of things, all of which are, I guess, terrible. One of which is the fact that Project Veritas lies again. They don't do any sort of independent investigation into any of the claims they broadcast. If you walked up to James O'Keefe and said that you were raped by Michelle Obama, who actually has a penis and is actually a Somalian man wearing a wig, they would run that story. They would run that story in 2 hours, babe. They would find the pic, they would find the text, they would run that story. They don't give a fuck. They'll let you go to court with it too. You can testify it, and then when you end up perjuring yourself, they'll abandon you. They don't give a fuck, okay? They don't give a shit. Project Veritas doesn't engage in any investigative standards as long as what you're telling them suits their narratives. And it's also disgusting, I think, how willing they are to use this guy. I don't think this guy is like a bad person. I genuinely don't. I listened to the entire thing. I really do think that he was caught up in the propaganda and that he heard something that he felt was suspicious, and because he had been misled into believing that Project Veritas was some sort of legitimate outlet, he brought it to them, and now he's gotten roped up in a scheme that the Project Veritas is using to milk as much money out of him as possible. And that's that, and I think that's really genuinely sad. One of the first standards of ethics for journalists, especially investigative journalists, is to protect your sources. That's like rule fucking one. But Project Veritas doesn't give a fuck about this guy. Project Veritas will eat him up and spit him out in whatever way gets them the maximum amount of clout and social media exposure. If he went to jail, they wouldn't care, like even slightly. But yeah, that's Project Veritas, people. That's the entire situation here. I feel bad for Richard Hopkins. He's being used. Still think he's dumb. I mean, whatever. He's getting led around like this. But yeah, it's just really, really genuinely sad. So hopefully he eventually recognizes that he's being used and he backs off of this at some point. But I don't know if that's gonna happen. Yeah, I don't know.